Hello class, and welcome to the second video lesson. Today we'll be covering two sections from your textbook. The first section is taken from 1-3, and it's about multiplying decimals. You can find this in your textbook on page 14. The second section we'll go over is section 1-4, and it is about dividing decimals, and you can find it on page 20. Alright, let's begin by looking at and working a few examples. For example 1, and please do put example 1. This will be very important when it comes to taking your note quizzes. For example 1, we have the numbers 7.2 times 0.6. And just like when we were adding and subtracting decimals, we're going to rewrite this. This is given in a horizontal way. We're going to write it vertically. So let's write it vertically over here to the side. We're going to put 7.2 and 0.6 times, and put our bar down here at the bottom. Now it's not important that the decimals line up for multiplication. If you just like to get in the habit of lining your decimals up, or if it works out that way just because of the way the numbers are, that's fine. But you don't have to line them up for multiplication. Now we're just going to go ahead and multiply. And we multiply just like we would with any numbers. You can almost, for right now, forget that there are decimals. And just say, all right, 6 times 2, well that's 12. The 2 comes here, carry the 1. 6 times 7. Well, what is 6 times 7? Well, that would be 42. We got to bring the 1 down, so we have a 3. And so we end up with 432. Now, this is where the decimals come in, where it makes it different. To find out where the decimal goes, you don't just drop the decimal down right here. If you do that, you're going to get the wrong answer. Instead, you have to count how many numbers are past the decimal. Well, look, we have one number past the decimal here. We have another number past the decimal here. That makes a total of 2. So you start at the end of the number and you move up 2 places. So the decimal goes right there. I'll write the number to the side so we can see it clearly. The number we get for our answer is 4.32. And we're going to box in our answer. And that's what we do there. All right, let's look at the next example. For example 2, here we have 3 numbers we're multiplying together. Now, just like addition, multiplication, it doesn't matter what order you use. So long as you have all multiplication, or in the case of addition, if you had all addition, you can add them in any order. Now, there are certain times when different orders make more sense because it makes it easier. So I could multiply the 0.2 times, remember this is a times symbol, it's a larger dot and it's not down here where the decimal is, it's up in between. It's in the middle of the number. See how it's not all the way up here, not all the way down here, but in the middle. That means to multiply. So here we have 0.2 times 3.47 times 5. Okay? So how do we do this? Well, you can actually multiply this in any order. I can multiply these 2 numbers first, I can multiply the middle and the last number together, or I can multiply the last and the first number together. And being a math person, and maybe you noticed it as well, it'll be easier to multiply the last and the first number together. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down into steps. All right, so now we have 0.2, we have our 5, and we have times, okay? We say 5 times 2. Well, what is that? It's 10. Okay? Where does the decimal go? How many numbers past the decimal do we have? We just have the 1. This is a whole number. It's a 5. It's a whole number. So only this 2 is past the decimal. So we put it, we go to the back, and we move up 1. The decimal goes right there. So we're left with the number 1. So we're not done yet. We need to go on to the second one. Take this number now and put it up here. We have 1. You could put 1.0 if you want, but it's not needed. And then you could say we're going to multiply it by the 3.47 times. Okay? Now, at this point, if you want to just remember that 1 times anything is itself, this might save you from doing some math work. So 1 times anything is itself, so our answer would be 3.47. And that's the answer. If you want, you don't have to work it this way. You could work it where you multiply the first 2 numbers together, then multiply it by 5. You'll get the same answer. This is just an easier way to do it. Because of getting the 1, it makes multiplying easier. If you want to try it and test my theory here, just go ahead and multiply it your own way and see which way is easier. I'm willing to bet it's the one I just used. All right, let's take a look at a third example. Okay? This is another example of why order matters, and also why looking at the problem before you try to solve it matters. Let's take a look. Example 3. I have 7.35 times 8.4 times 0. Some students just jump right in and start multiplying this. But that's going to be a waste of your time, because if you notice that you have a multiplying by 0, and you remember that anything times 0 is 0, then I know that if I multiply these two together, I get 0. And then I would multiply this times the 0 I just got, and the answer would be 0. So there's actually, you don't need to do any multiplication here. You can just say, well, if I'm multiplying everything in the end by 0, then the answer is going to be 0. If you don't believe me, work it out on your own and test it out and see. If you don't understand it, it's a good idea to go ahead and work it out for yourself so you can see how it works. But if you do already see that this is going to be 0, then you don't need to work it out. You can just say, wait, this is 0. I know that because I know what happens when I multiply with 0. All right, that's enough with multiplication. Let's look at division. Here we have example 4. It says we have 1.8 divided into 7.74. All right, now if you don't remember the rules for decimals and division, here it is. The outside number cannot have a decimal in it, so we have to move the decimal over. The decimal is now right here. And however many times you move the decimal on the outside, you have to move it the same number of times on the inside. So you have to move it over just 1 time. So I'm going to rewrite it. So our new division problem looks like 18 divided into 77.4. So that's what our new problem looks like. And if we do this out, we would say we get 18 into 77 is 4. Multiply back. Well, 4 times 8 is 32. Whoops. Need to put the 2 there. Put the 2 there. Carry the 3. And then you would end up with 72 right there. We would subtract, and we would get a 5. We would bring down the 4. And the decimal goes, you can go ahead and put the decimal at the top right there. The decimal goes in the same spot that it is right here for the division. 18 goes into 54. It goes in there 3 times. And if you multiply back, you'll end up getting 54. When you subtract, you get a big fat 0. So we're done. There's no remainders, nothing else to do. Our answer is 4.3. All right, we need to work one last example, and then we're done. The last example is example 5. Here we have an example where we're going to have to do something that they call annexing the 0. And if you want to know how that's spelled, here it is. It is called annexing zeros. Okay? So what we're going to do is we have a situation where you don't see a decimal for this whole number right here. But all whole numbers do have decimals. They're at the very end. So this 10 is actually 10 point. Okay? We don't bother putting it because we don't typically need it. So now let's go ahead and move the decimal. Remember, we need a whole number out here. So I need the decimal to be behind the number. We have to move it twice. Over here, we end up moving the decimal also twice. For each of these gaps right here, we end up adding a 0 to the problem. I'm going to copy it down here, and I recommend you do the same thing. So now we have 4 going into 1,000. So 4 goes into 10. How many times? 2. Multiply back. What do you get? You get an 8. You subtract, you get 2. You bring down 1 0. You multiply, you find out how many times does 4 go into 20. You find out that that's 5 times. You multiply, you get 20. Ta-da! And now we end up with a 0. Now do remember something, class. Notice the 2 is above this 0. The 5 is above this 0. There's nothing above this 0. We need to have something above that 0. And it's just another 0. Okay? So our answer comes out to be 250. 4 goes into 1,250 times. So I'm going to go ahead and write the answer down right here and box it in. All right, and now we're done. We'll go over some more examples and maybe even some word problems in class. Hope you guys took good notes, and if you need to see anything again, remember, you can always replay the video.